You mentioned that the US in future will be moving towards hemispheric defense, but there is no sign of US withdrawal from Asia. In fact, it's making its presence even stronger than before. For example, recent 11 billion weapons sales to Taiwan, etc. What's my opinion? Okay, so the US a few months ago came out with this new national security strategy, right? And once again, let me repeat, it involves the Monroe Doctrine and the Trump corollary. What is the Monroe Doctrine? So that we understand what we're talking about. The Monroe Doctrine was a policy, US foreign policy from 1823. It said that the Americas were closed to any further European colonization or any other interference. Any European interference in the Western Hemisphere, in the Americas, would henceforth be treated as a hostile act against the United States. So the US let down a red line that no external interference will now be allowed in the Western Hemisphere. And they enforced it eventually through military force, military strength. So that's the Monroe Doctrine. Now, the National Security Strategy 2025 talks about the Trump corollary to the Monroe Doctrine. So it's a contemporary, modern 21st century reinterpretation. It extends the idea of the Monroe Doctrine. It says that the US now has the right, it's going to assert the right to be the super cop, the policeman in the Western Hemisphere. The US will police the Western Hemisphere. It's going to police the Western Hemisphere against extra regional powers like China, Russia, whoever else wants to influence the region. No longer allowed. You all get out, right? And it will also police the region against regional actors such as drug cartels, etc. And the objective is to preserve US dominance and in the region and to preserve security in the region. So this is an imperial policy. The US is now acting as a classical empire. This is our domain. You're all our vassals, and we're gonna police you all. You guys better not, get out of line. And nobody else from outside is allowed to, have any influence or any interference in the region. So that's the national security strategy. So the national security strategy, it does explicitly recenter American strategy on the Western Hemisphere. Okay, it says that American preeminence, American dominance, American hegemony in the Western Hemisphere is a basic condition, a central condition for America's national security and prosperity. Okay, it says that. So it revives the Monroe Doctrine. It adds the Trump corollary to it. It says that the US will assert and enforce its hegemony in the region in whatever words it uses. Yeah, it's my words I'm using, but it has the same meaning. It's going to deny external powers, which means non-Western Hemisphere powers, any strategic foothold or military foothold in the region. Okay, and this national security strategy says that the US needs to readjust its global military posture away from regions whose relevance may have declined for US, for US interests, and the US will now reorient its posture towards its missions in the Western Hemisphere. Okay, so what are the elements of this? First of all, Europe is being downgraded. America's ties with Europe are being downgraded. Europe is now expected to shoulder much more of the financial burden of its security. See, the US is part of NATO. It is the hegemonic power in NATO. And the other nations are all apart from Canada, are all in Western Europe. Yeah, mostly. And the US has been financing NATO for the most part all these years. And now the US requires that European nations must double their expenditure towards NATO from 2.5% to 5% by about 2030, around that time. So the Europeans are now expected to shoulder much more of the burden of NATO, right? So Europe is being downgraded. And not just Europe, it's EMEA. There's this region called EMEA in business parlance. EMEA means Europe, Middle East, and Africa. Okay, so this entire region, Europe, Middle East, Africa, EMEA, is being downgraded, and the US is now going to focus on hemispheric defense. It's going to prioritize its hemispheric defense over its global forward presence. Now, please understand that it is not just black and white. It sounds like the US is completely retreating, but it is not. The US, the national security strategy document, it still treats China and Russia as major adversaries. Okay. And it is linking the hemispheric security to global great power competition. So the strategy doesn't say that we need to give up all our tools for projecting power outside of the Western Hemisphere. It doesn't say that we need to shut down all our extraterritorial military bases. The US has more than 700 or 800 extraterritorial military bases beyond its territory. Many of them are in the Eastern Hemisphere, right? 130 roughly of them are in Japan. More than 100 are in South Korea. Is the US going to shut that down? Absolutely not. Okay. So the US strategy is going to continue to maintain those tools for projecting power in the Eastern Hemisphere. Okay. And they're going to be open to using military force wherever required. So the policy is hemisphere first, not hemisphere only. They're going to prioritize the Western Hemisphere, but they're not withdrawing as such from the Eastern Hemisphere. They want to reduce the potential of overstretching themselves, right? And they want to preserve their capacity to compete globally from a stronger position in the Western Hemisphere. That is the deal. So the US is not giving up on its global influence. It's not giving up on the alliances and vassal arrangements it has across the world. It's not giving up any of that. It's not giving up any of its power projection capabilities. It's reordering the way it approaches the problems it faces in the world. It's not abolishing any of the roles it currently plays. So its position in the Western Hemisphere is now going to be, you could say, a neo-imperial posture. They can see the effect of that right away. A few years ago, they took over Venezuela. Right? It's going to be a muscular approach in the Western Hemisphere. And outside, it's going to shift the burden to its vassals. So the vassals will shoulder more of the burden, and the US will lose none of its power projection capability. So that is the situation. Right? It's more nuanced than simply withdrawing into the Western Hemisphere and hemispheric defense.